Welcome to the Bloom Show. This is Sahid, your host. This Bloom Show is brought to you by New Bloom Media. And what's the purpose of the show? Is to help the floral industry connect to each other across all sectors with growers, distributors, florists, wholesalers, services, and more. And why? Because we truly believe that the more information we have, the more informed we have, we make better decisions and we collaborate better. So it's very important to share and as well to chime in. So if you're here today with us, and we know it's in the middle of Valentine's Day, so we expect more views after our recorded episodes. But if you are here today and you want to ask a question, chime in. And why is this episode so important? Why? Because it's in Florida. I live in Florida, and for me, I'm always a local, right? So for me, it's important. And today I have David Register of FernTrust. And what is FernTrust? FernTrust is a company that somewhat, I might be wrong, but someone started the industry, or his parents started the industry of growing ferns. And we were known as the fern capital of the world, right? And David will correct me, or just in case I'm going a little too above, but it was the fern capital of the world. So there's a place in Florida where all they grow, or a bit of it, is ferns. And then there's springs there too, but there's also ferns. And it's really interesting to understand where they've come from, how they've continued to grow, how the industry has changed with competition coming from other countries, and how they work together as a community as well, because it's a niche. But to that topic, there has been freezes in Florida. So we are going to talk about some freezes and see some videos, not pictures. I couldn't get the pictures down, but see some videos, which are pretty shocking to me as a Florida guy my whole life, to see ice, but I mean icicles. So it's really neat. Not neat, but really shocking to see it. And David Register will speak more about that. Before we jump in, I do want to do some housekeeping. I do want to invite everybody, including you, David, as well, to, let me add it here to the stage, to the Bloom Together event. The Bloom Together event is a not-for-profit event that we host every year for the last 6 years. It brings together different companies. It's about 45 different sponsors contributing a small amount, and all the leftover proceeds are donated to Seed Your Future and American Floral Endowment. It's a place where we come as a community to network and show the power and celebrate networking, collaboration, and building community together. It continues to grow every year. It's something that I want to continue the legacy and have it as a pillar of showing how we are stronger together across all sectors. So you're invited to scan and join us on Eventbrite, and sign up and be here in Miami, March 2nd. And then our calendar, we have a micro holiday calendar. It's really, really interesting, really cool. Why? Because it allows you as a flower shop wholesaler grower to understand what other holidays are there to build more business for yourself, to grow more business for yourself, to find these niche markets, and to have an opportunity to either market it or educate your florists or supermarkets on what else they can do. And we have the event calendar, which allows us to understand what education events are happening, what conventions are happening, and a place that you can network. Again, scan the QR code and you're ready to rock. FernTrust. This is David Register, February 10th. We are having, I want to say Dragon Ball Z, but no, Rocking Bar Z, Mr. Joe Don Zetzi, the supermarket consultant, where he's going to be talking about in-store flower shops and the importance of them and how to manage them and what we can do as growers and distributors to support that as well. Penny and Ace will be on February 19th. Fun show. If you haven't missed it, that's on a Thursday. These are 2 10-minute shows. We are going to have Profitable Forest, again, 10 minutes as a correspondence on February 20th. Verdissimo, Preserved Flowers, will be on February 24th if you want to learn more about preserved flowers. And then Ecuador y sus Flores is another correspondent from Ecuador talking about the industry and talking about what happened for Valentine's Day as well. So that's a wrap for that. And without further ado, I'm going to invite Mr. David Register onto the show. Thank you. See you in a second. Oh, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment, and ask all the questions you like. We really want to see some great activity here. And even give shout outs. If you're an old friend of David Register, say, hi, how are you? We'd love to get your input.
The Bloom Show in the Bay, connect and bloom. In the bright yellow light.
Mr. David Register, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing well.
Thank you. Thank you for being here today. I see, really quick, I see a Texas little state behind you. Are you originally from Texas?
Yeah, originally, my family's been farming here for 5 generations in Florida, but my dad was in the service and I lived in Texas till I was 15 years old before we moved back to the family farms here. So
Wow.
once a Texan, always a Texan, I guess.
David, thanks for being. I know you texted me earlier today and said, look, I've had a rough night, so I'm not sure you're going to get my 100% today. But, thank you for being here. And before we dive into it, can you share a little bit about yourself and about FernTrust?
Yes, my name is, like I said, David Register. I'm the executive vice president at FernTrust. We started as a cooperative back in 1986 to market the cut foliages that we grow, not only on our farm, but other family member farms here in the local area. My grandfather actually had been growing ferns and foliages here since 1960. So we've been doing it a long time, but mostly we were in the citrus and cattle business and did that until all of our orange groves froze in a similar freeze back in 1983.
Okay. And how many years again, you said?
What is that? 40 years, I guess, this year now, since 1986 that FernTrust has been around. I helped start the company with 3 other growers here in the area.
Okay.
And FernTrust actually does the harvesting, packaging, and then marketing of all the foliages that are grown on the individual farms. The farms still grow them, and then we do the harvesting forward. So we each have our own farms also where we grow. It's just FernTrust is kind of the marketing arm of the company.
And you all work together as one, so it's
correct.
A co-op-ish.
Yes, we are a co-op.
Okay, fantastic. And so tell us the history a little bit. When you and I first talked, that was something that I really want to learn about. Tell us the history about FernTrust and how did it become correct me if I'm wrong, the fern capital of the world at some point.
Well,
go for
FernTrust, is just one of the members of the growing family here in this area. Since the early 1900s, there was fern grown in this area, and it was actually cut and packed and loaded on train cars for big markets in New York and Chicago, packed in ice. And then it's evolved over the years to where this is the heart of where 80+% of all the foliages that are cut are grown in the United States. There's some grown out west, and in California, but the majority of them still come from right here in a real small area of Central Florida, about an hour north of Orlando.
Wow, so 80% of the ferns are grown here in this area?
Yeah, in the U.S. and Canada, our markets. We also export all over the world from here as well. We don't export as much as we used to. A lot of that market's been taken over by Central America now.
Gotcha. And what's the main thing you're growing? What are the ferns now? Has there been any evolution in ferns?
They started out, real simple. Years ago, there was 4 or 5 different ferns, and now we have 80+ different varieties of foliage that we grow here in the area and ship. And we not only just pack them bulk, but we make, custom bouquets and garlands and wreaths and things like that out of all the different products that we grow here.
And really neat. I have someone chiming in for a question, and it's saying, what made ferns such an important foliage crop historically?
Well, I'm not a designer, but I can just say it adds a lot of Mother Nature. It was used historically, I think, to cover a lot of the armature and things in a floral arrangement, be the base to it.
Okay.
And cover that. And it was mainly used for that reason. And I think as designs evolved over time, it became more of a focal point. And people like green and gardening. It's always been a popular color. And you can get a lot of texture with different foliages that you don't get with flowers necessarily.
Gotcha. And it's hardy, right? So it's usually the last thing to go.
Yeah, it's the first thing that has to be shipped out for Valentine's Day, and it's the last thing usually left in a flower arrangement whenever it's sitting in your office somewhere or home.
And I grew up seeing leatherleaf my whole life. I'll never forget
Yeah.
leatherleaf and knowing that it'll always last.
And leatherleaf was, at one point it was probably 80% of what we sold, and now it's probably down to around 35 to 40% of our total sales, because for a while it just became so popular that it got boring to people, I guess, and they liked to go to other and different new things as they came online. So it's still a very important crop and probably has more volume than just about any other type of foliage used in the floral industry. But as other things come on, it loses a little bit of its market share.
Yes, it does, but it's still hanging tough, right? Because I remember in the 80s, 87, 88, 89, that it was everywhere.
Oh, yeah, it was the heyday of it back then. We were loading ocean container after ocean container for the markets over in Europe, especially, going into Holland.
Yeah.
And it was just like really boomed. I would say there's probably a third of the acreage that was early 90s. Early to mid 90s is when it kind of started declining, the amount of leatherleaf that was exported. And that kind of lessened the amount that was needed to be grown in our area. Plus, it's very expensive crop to grow. People don't realize, even though it's probably one of the cheaper things, it's a very difficult crop to grow.
Explain why, if other than the freeze, and we'll get to that, and that's a great segue. But
yeah, well, you figure it's not like a flower, other things. You plant it one time and then you're continually harvesting off of it for the next 15, 20, 30 years. So you create kind of a micro environment there. And so every pest, every bug, every fungus that likes it also wants to be there. So you have to be really on your game to make sure you keep all those things out. And over that time period, we've also had a lot of different diseases imported into here from South and Central America with all the other imports that are coming into Florida, that the environment here was not accustomed to. And so it kind of really spread like wildfire, especially in Fern and things like that. When it did get into it, it required a lot more careful monitoring, a lot more use of fungicides to grow it.
And the water bill must be pretty crazy as well, no? Because it is.
Well, luckily, the water bill for us is mainly just the diesel we have to buy to pump it. Because we pump out of surface water lakes around here that are on the farm.
You are. Yep.
We also use groundwater, but the expense comes in the fuel that we use to run the engines to pump the water. Luckily, we don't have to pay for the water yet. We've been had a big allocation for many decades now.
Because you do have some springs nearby, right? What's the spring that's nearby you?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of springs in Florida, but the biggest one close to us is called Silver Glen Spring, which is right on the other side of Lake George. It's very popular.
Yeah, beautiful.
It's probably not, as a crow flies, it's not even 10 miles from our farms.
Yeah, it's a beautiful spring. If you've never been to Florida, one of those springs, you have to go. There's not a tourism conversation, but I think it's a beautiful thing.
Very beautiful there.
Oh, stunning. I've been to Wikiwachi Springs as well, and Rainbow Springs, and there's stunning out there.
The neat thing about Silver Glen is you can drive your boat up into it. So you drive your boat, it looks like you're driving it into a swimming pool, or the water is crystal clear in there.
So crystal clear. It's stunning. So we have someone saying, it's Malika, amazing, great choice. Great guest choice, Sahid. All right. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in. So I want to show a video real quick and ask you about it. So I'm going to hopefully do this right. Give me a second. Let's see if we did it right. Okay. And wait, sorry. Figuring this out. Let me stop it real quick. There we go. That'll help us. All right. There we go. What are we looking at?
We're looking at after the worst night of the freeze, and we had been running our water pumps for 18 hours, and it finally warmed up about noon, maybe a little after the next day, to where we could turn our water off long enough to go in and do some maintenance on our motors, make sure all the oil was at the right level, make sure they had plenty of fuel still. But that's what happens when you run water to freeze protect. it causes an exothermic reaction whenever water freezes on plants. So it gives off heat. So as long as you keep applying water the whole time the air temperature is below 32 degrees, you won't freeze the plant. It actually will stay at 32, and most of the mature hardy foliage will survive and not be burned. If the pump goes down and stops during that, then it will cook it all, and it will all be totally brown and black the next day. But, you know, we keep our fingers crossed and we keep things running, but it's always very nerve-wracking when you have prolonged events like we've had over the last 2 weeks like that.
So this one, you could see there's a shade over, right? A blue shade, right? You're using blue.
Yes, that's saran cloth, we call it. It's a polyester woven material that offers about 78% shade over the plants, is what low leaf takes to grow.
Gotcha. So it's, yeah. And then I have to say to everybody, this is Florida. So, you know, I'm just shocked by the amount of ice. Then let me see if I can show you a couple pictures as well here. Let me see how I can do this. Okay, let me see if I can show you this picture, if it'll pop up. There you go. That's a picture, right?
Yeah, that was during the freeze while the water was still running. It just kind of shows you the thickness of the ice and the icicles. I don't know if you can shuffle through any of the other ones, but you can see it was like quite
big
a mess.
Pieces of ice, right? The big chunks of ice. I think there's another picture here.
Yeah, that's another angle from a different fernery. But we basically had 200 acres of stuff that looked just like that. So if we could have sold ice, we would have been in really
look at the icicles
on it right then.
That's what I think it's just crazy to me, is those icicles. That is not something I'm used to as living in Miami.
And the worst part about this freeze is it came right in the heat of our Valentine's Day harvesting season. So as you can imagine, there was no way we could have people out there cutting fern because it was totally covered in ice. So we missed about 3 or 4 days right in the middle of when we needed to be out there the most. So it really put a lot of pressure on us getting all of our stuff harvested for Valentine's, and it prevented us from, you know, taking on a lot of additional orders. This is one of the many reasons why it's so important to pre-order stuff and get stuff in, because of course, you know, those orders get filled first when you have an event like this, and they always never seem to fail. They come at the very worst time.
I want to do a check-in with in our comments and our audience, who here is a florist, because I want to say something about that in a second. So if you could give us a little flower icon, if you're a florist, I'd love to know that. And what you're saying, David, is so important. And that's when it comes to collaboration. Why? Because if you're able to give your pre-order as a florist, then your wholesaler could also give their pre-order, which in turn, then the farm could prepare for your pre-order. Am I correct?
Yes, because we have to ship most of the greens, because they're hardy, like you said. We're finished with shipping most of those by the end of January, because most wholesalers and most truck lines want to truck the greens first, so they'll have room for all the flowers to come. So that's why we need the orders actually towards the end of December or earlier, so we can make sure that we have enough in our coolers to cover us for when we have events like this that can set us back for harvesting.
Exactly. Yeah, and because it's a co-op, your team could work together in understanding what is going to be allocated, what's not going to be allocated, and it allows you to prepare way in advance.
Correct, and it makes things so difficult when you're dealing with a situation like a freeze, and then at the same time you have orders continuing to come in, even from your best customers sometimes, and you're trying to figure out, you know, what's the best method to get all this stuff to them in a short window. Normally we keep tons of inventory, and we have even more inventory this time of year than normal, but it's always impossible to anticipate, are you going to sell more or less? And I know it's the same thing for the florists, is why they're hesitant to give the orders ahead of time. But I can say this, on the green side, it's always better to overestimate how many you need, because it lasts so long. So even if you have a bunch that's left over after the holidays, then you're good, because it's not going to go bad on you, like maybe say certain flowers would. So it's better to over order at the holidays and then work off of that for the week or two or three or whatever it takes after the holiday to use up the rest of the greens. If it happens to be slow, hopefully you sell
Exactly.
everything.
So how long can a green like a fern last?
It
I know
depends on
it's very hardy.
yeah, it depends on the foliage, and the leather leaf fern. That's one of the reasons they call it leather leaf, because it's so hardy. It will
Okay.
actually last for months inside of a cooler as long as you keep it real close to freezing and not freeze it. Um, some of the other greens, like tree ferns, the different asparagus greens, you have the tree fern, the Ming, the Springer Eye, foxtail. Those are a lot more delicate. So really, those you want to use within a week or two after you get them at the
Okay.
longest, because they do have a little bit less shelf life than the hardier stuff like the leather leaf, the pittosporum, the monsteras, those types of leaves.
And you said, a week or two, right? So that's not bad.
Yeah, correct.
That's
Yeah.
better than 2 to 3 days.
Well, I mean, it's not like a flower. Still, they're a little hardier, but it's just it's actually in the asparagus family. They're the
Okay.
same asparagus that you would eat, just the different varieties of them. So basically, the spears of asparagus are just like the ferns before they open up and feather out. So if
nice.
you leave the edible asparagus as a plant and let it grow to maturity, it looks a
Okay.
lot like Springer Eye when it feathers out.
Well, that's really interesting. That's super interesting. And a lot of the stuff is like that, like Hypericum, for example. It's a little flower, and supposedly Hypericum St. John wort. That's what they say.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting that that's what it is. And I have a question here. How do you take care? What's some tips to take care of fern? Like the minute you receive, do you put them in the freezer? Do you not put them in the freezer?
Yeah, the best thing for ferns when you get them is to just keep them in the box and keep them closed up and cold. The worst thing for probably flowers and ferns and those is for them to get hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold. So you don't want to bring them in and out of your coolers.
Okay.
So you want to leave them closed up until you're ready to use them, because as soon as you bring them out and you stick them in water, you put them back, they're using up shelf life at that point. So
Yeah.
it's just, the way I equate it to people when we're giving them a tour of our packing house is we're just like one of those sci-fi movies to where they have the astronauts and they're going to travel to Mars and it's going to take years for them to get there, and they put them like to sleep in suspended animation. So you're basically putting the plants to sleep when we bring them in and making them dormant. And then you wake them up when you take them back out, cut the stems and put them in water or buckets of water or whatever. That's when they start using up their shelf life. That time they're in the cooler is basically doesn't exist as long as you're keeping them really close to the freezing without freezing them.
Would you said it's 36 or 32?
Well, not 32 because that's real close. I would say anywhere 34, 35, 36 in that range would be a good temperature to keep them. We actually did research with the University of Florida of how we could extend the life of them, because we were shipping these things all the way to Saudi Arabia, the Middle East, and it was taking a long time on a container. If special atmospheres or, different additives, what would make fern last the longest? And it was a few degrees of temperature. So the closest, if you kept it at 33, you would get a much longer shelf life at the end than if you kept it at 40 or 36, So the closer you kept it to freezing without freezing it, the longer the stuff would last in the end.
And I know this might be an off-topic question, but I'm thinking you're in the middle of it. What other crops do we grow in Florida for the floral industry that's not ferns? Anything else?
They grow a few different types of flowers. It used to be a huge place for growing glads, but the farmland got to be so expensive, and I think the glad market, kind of went away years ago a little bit. I don't think there's as much demand for them as there used to, and the imported stuff was so much cheaper that all the farms closed that were doing that, and they grow different kind of vegetable crops in those areas now. That are their subdivisions, which is what happened to a lot of Florida agriculture.
I know that chrysanthemums were a thing. In Homestead, we do sunflowers, some stock or snapdragons. So we do see some items, but I was curious in your area, if there was anything else grown before ferns in your area?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, it's always been a huge agriculture area. This was a huge citrus growing area. And our packing house actually was a tangerine and orange packing house before the freezes back of 83 Christmas and 85, the January, the year after. there was 125,000 acres of citrus in this area that was wiped out in a freeze overnight back then. So
Wow.
that was one of the ways we had to pivot from one form of agriculture to other. So we greatly expanded our cut foliage operations at times since we had lost all of our citrus growing area.
And are ferns natural, or did it just like, what's the story? Who's the first guy that started the chicken?
There were some people in Pearson, and I'm not certain
Pearson?
exactly who it was.
Yeah.
It might have been a man by the name of Pearson, but they were florists from up somewhere in Chicago or New York or Philadelphia, one of the big cities up there, and they moved down here specifically to grow greens for their floral shops in the city.
Okay.
And they planted some plumosa, and they planted underneath these slat houses that were like wooden slat houses. They would have a string that went from the ground up to the roof. They would train the plumosa to grow up the string. They would cut it at the top and bottom, roll it up, and pack it into a wooden crate with ice and put it on the train for headed up north. And that's how the industry started in this area. That
is so neat, man. That is so cool. So are you still growing plumosa?
We still grow plumosa. It's one of those things that's weird. It was very, very popular. Then it kind of lost popularity where it almost ceased to exist. And now it's fairly popular again. It does not last as long, it sheds, and that there's a few native that have some kind of nasty thorns on it. I think it's one of the reasons. But
nasty
it's a beautiful
thorns. Yeah, it has nasty. We have it around our house sometimes, but that's how I learned it had some nasty thorns.
Yeah.
Weed it out. Yeah. That's really neat. So David, I really appreciate your time. I want to be respectful of your time since I know you lost some sleep last night trying to keep your crop safe. I really appreciate it. It's one of my favorite shows because I didn't even read any of the questions. We just chatted really. So I know we sent you like 10 questions, but we have a little shout out here. Thanks for another great Bloom Show episode. So again, thank you so much, David, for your time. I really appreciate you. Is there any last minute things you'd like to say?
Well, you're welcome to follow along with our efforts at our FernTrust social media pages. We have a Facebook page, Instagram. Also, I have my own personal one, David W. Register, on Facebook and Instagram. And I post a lot of the day-to-day farm stuff that's going on, not only on our cut foliage farm, but we also raise beef cattle too. There's a lot of cute little calf and cow pictures and things like that on there. So I encourage y'all to follow along on those two pages. My daughter does most of the stuff for our FernTrust page, but I like to keep my own personal one too, to keep in touch. And I love hearing from florists and people that are using our products, the good and the bad things of what we can do to improve. And if they have any questions at all, I try to be very responsive to those kinds of things also. So
that's very important.
I really appreciate you giving me the chance to be on here and talk about foliage. And everybody remember to make over 80% of your arrangements foliage and everything will be good.
That would be great. So wait a second. You said something, you dropped something. I'm going to pick it up. Cattle, beef cattle. There's Florida beef cattle.
Oh yeah. Cattle. Florida is one of the top producing states for beef cattle. I don't know. You just must not ever get in from the coast. If you ride in the interior, especially.
I know mahi, stone crab.
There's five of it's like either 5 or 6 of the top largest ranches in the United States are in Florida. And they raise a lot of beef cattle, especially down around South Florida, south of Lake Okeechobee. So we have green grass most of the year usually. So it's a big place for raising calves, and then they ship them off to the feedlots in Texas and Nebraska and the Midwest where the corn's grown.
Got it. Okay. So there's not a place like maybe a steakhouse you could eat Florida cattle.
Well, no, there's Florida grown beef now too. That's a big movement where they're finishing out a lot of them up in North Florida now and selling them. It's I can't remember. You caught me off guard too. What the name of the outfit is? Wow. We actually do some local grown beef on our own place too, where I raise calves out and then I sell shares to them for local people here. But Florida's a big beef state. People don't realize that. We got a lot of cowboys in Florida.
That is interesting. I did know that we're really big into agriculture and also sugarcane, right? We're huge with sugarcane as well. There's a lot of land here, and it takes about 6 hours to get out from Miami to somewhere else. 6 to 7 hours.
Yeah. The longest drive in the United States is about if you leave Key West and try to drive to Pensacola in Florida. That's a long ride, I can promise you.
That's a long ride, man. So our favorite place to go, and we call it a short drive, is Jekyll Island, right on the Gold Coast, the Golden Isles. So in Georgia, our favorite place to go once or twice a year, because it's 6 hours anywhere you go, or 8. I used to live in Tallahassee, 8.5 hours. But David, really appreciate your time. It was a pleasure just hanging out and chit-chatting with you, man, and learning a lot about what you do and everything you've done for the industry, for the fern industry as well. And you are very involved in the industry as well. So thank you for that. And maybe next time we'll talk about that.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you,
All
Sahid.
right. Take care.
Have a
My
good
pleasure.
afternoon.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Let me change the media thing here, and then you'll go. Thank you. Take care. All right. So that was really interesting. I promise I did not read one question as I usually do. I was just very curious, and I forgot to mention to him that I volunteered myself for an alligator hunting trip, because I really, that's one of my bucket lists. Not sure why, but David has told me he goes alligator hunting sometimes, and that's a Florida thing, and I really want to do it one time. So, don't consider me weird, just curious, and a little risk taker of doing some alligator hunting. I really have a dream meal is a nice loin of alligator meat, not fried, for some reason. I've never had it before. Have a comment here of excellent discussion. Learned something new today. Thank you so much, Kelly. I appreciate you, Kelly. So again, want to say a huge thank you to our sponsors, which is really important, because without our sponsors, we could not do this. So really want to say thank you to them, because they help support our floral community. And this episode is probably sponsored and supported by United Selections, Continental Floral Greens, Deli Floor, Bea Floor, Verdissimo, Sunflower Technologies, and Jovere de Boer. And a big shout out to all the sponsors that will be supporting the Bloom Together. Next show, I'll have the sponsors that will be supporting the Bloom Together. And don't forget that if you want to be a part of the Bloom Together, just scan. It's totally free. You can show up and attend. It's on March 2nd at Cooper Blues Rock Bar in Grill in Doral. It starts at 7 and it ends at 12. So you can come after your dinner. If you're doing a dinner with customers, and then come out and have a great time as we celebrate the floral community together. We are a lot stronger together. There's many people that believe in competition and are a little vicious sometimes, but we really want to remind people that we are stronger together as an industry, which we learned during COVID, and not to forget it, that together in collaboration and community and unity, we could really build something beautiful together and continue to do great things for people out there when it comes to supplying flowers. And then secondly is the calendar. Jump in on that calendar, right? If you're always thinking about how do I create new business, this calendar will show you religious holidays, will show you viral holidays, social media holidays. It will also show you what city those holidays are in. So if there is a certain religious holiday, what group is within that holiday, and then where in the U.S. does the majority of that group live or reside. So you could really pick it and say, okay, let me try and know that you have the community if you live in that area, and maybe do some more research yourself. And this is 1.0, so we're going to have the 2.0 coming out soon. So tune in, scan the QR code. And again, they're both free. So once you scan the QR code, you'll be given 2 pop-ups, and it'll let you do the calendar for the events, which is networking and conventions. You click on that one, and then you can click on the other one, or whichever you like. You can take them both. You can take one. And don't forget to share with everybody around. And if you like the show, please subscribe, like, comment, and press the little bell, right? Because that little bell will give you a heads up when we have a next live show. Just again, want a comment to everybody, and who here enjoyed the show, give me a thumbs up, and then we'll call it a wrap. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, no thumbs up. Have a great one. See you next show. Take care. Thank you so much. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. We really appreciate it. It helps us a lot. Bye-bye now.
The Bloom Show, innovate, connect them.